We've hit the button. The button has been hitting. Hello, Carrier Shea Gorgon. I'm still working on getting my earphones in and all that sort of thing, but we can't stop the rock. We've got to get those involved in some play for time. How's everything? You holding up okay? What's your life like? You good?
Am I holding up okay? I'm good. So let's see. What have we got for you this week? One is I've wanted for a while to go to the library you used to work at. I don't know, I guess deep down I sort of thought there'd be like a banned from the library wall of shame and like you'd be on it or something. But like anyway, so we did that, which was really cool. Trip down memory lane for you and like a fun little peek into your storied past for the rest of us. And then we went to Concord, Massachusetts with everybody's favorite Dan Gorgon, who does not appear in the video but did edit the video, and went to the Old Manse in Concord, which is probably best known for the fact that Nathaniel Hawthorne lived there for about 3 years when he wrote his first hit, which was like Tales from the Old Manse or something. That's how the house got its name. Also, Ralph Waldo Emerson lived there, and just so many creative people. It became a sort of destination for creatives of all types and like artists and thinkers and that kind of stuff.
So we have my history, we have the history of America all rolled into one.
Together from clips of film made under a research program in computer. The images are arranged to illustrate this talk, which will be an attempt to suggest some of the formal problems that hold my interest regarding design in motion.
I did not approve it.
I know you didn't, but it's in. It's in until I get a new one. So yeah, Stevens Memorial Library. We have another chapter to the library story at some point, but this is high school. So I was 16 or so years old. I begged my parents to let me get an actual real job. I went to the library and applied, and they were like, yep, you can work here. And they have a role called page. And what a library page does is they are supposed to just shelve books and put the books away and run little errands for the circulation desk or reference. But me being me and me being precocious my whole life, but once you get a certain age, you're no longer precocious, you're just a jerk. Once I got into that stage of my life, what I did was I was helping out a little bit at the circulation desk. I was a good recommender of books because I had such a knowledge of what was hot in the general public, as well as the books I had read and liked and all that sort of thing. And then reference, I loved to pretend I was a reference librarian, although you actually need a pretty significant degree to be a reference librarian, it turns out. You've researched that before, right?
My secret fantasy job is librarian. So I'm trying to remember now when I was in litigation, like practicing as a lawyer in litigation, I thought the state law librarians at the state law library in New Hampshire, I thought they had the coolest job because basically for all the law clerks across the state, they could call and these two would track down some like obscure legal thing for you. So if you were like, oh, shipping, if something falls off a truck during shipping, like whose fault is it? And they'd go help you find the answer. And I thought that was about the coolest job I'd ever heard of. So it's like my secret fantasy job. So yes, I've looked at it. You would require an MLS degree. If you want to be a law librarian, ideally you should have a law degree, although I think some people get by with that. But yeah, I have not done it. I don't think you have either.
I've not been an official reference librarian, that's for darn sure, but I've been a not official many things, so this would be one of them. So Stevens Memorial Library is in North Andover, Massachusetts. It's right on one of their kind of main roads. From where I lived, you'd go right down the street. Basically, I don't know, it was like less than a 10-minute walk away from where I grew up when I lived in North Andover. So my poor mom and dad, there were two more libraries on the official Chris Brogan library story. One is Pittsfield, Maine, where as 13 or so years old, I used to hide out in their building, so much so that they forced us down into the trustees meeting hall. And when people would call that number in town looking for me, that's when you knew life had been interesting. And then also Augusta, Maine, there was a library where I got my first adult room library card, because before that you could only have the children's room, and it was like such a win to have that.
I grew up in Chatham, and my mom used to take me to the Chatham Library, which someday I'll have to go down and get some footage of that. But I love libraries. I'm a nerd. I realize this. Just the same, I think people forget sometimes the resources that are available to the public by virtue of their local library. So check out this segment and look for yourself all the things that are not books that you can borrow or do and use at the library.
So this is another one of our little segments about let's go to a library. Only this is Stevens Memorial Library in North Andover, Mass. This is actually the first job I ever had. I grew up loving libraries. I was raised in libraries. And so it just kind of made sense that when I was in high school, I would find a way to work here. So I worked as a page, which is like the person who goes and reshelves the books that when they get put back and everything. So I'm not circulation desk, I'm not reference. Only what I did a lot of was do circulation jobs, do reference jobs, do things I wasn't supposed to officially, just because I really loved it. And I, to this day, just love books so much. So we thought we'd look around inside Stevens Library and see what's different. Now, by the way, they revamped it since I ever last was here in like 1987. So it's a little different than then. So circulation's here, but it used to be even more here. And reference used to be there, but it's even more here. So it's different. They preserve so much in the library. Like their goal is to kind of get a certain kind of energy going. And this is the rotunda. If you look, it goes up. It's got big, beautiful archways. It's meant to be very quiet. They've got a lot of their really old books here, which would not leave circulation. This is from the original building, but this used to be kind of the outer edge of part of the original building. So everything past that out there, it's all added in. But I love that they preserved all this old stuff. You could see all kinds of details, like check out the mantles, check out above them, check out some of the other bits. It's beautiful in here. There's Star Trek on Sunday. There's indoor mushroom growing on Tuesday. Well, so we did it. We went inside. It was fun. It was good to look around. It's neat to see the expansion because that happened after I left. And it was kind of nice to see all the extra features that come with a library now. There was movie night. There was all kinds of things for adults to do. They had Pokemon for the kids. They had a teen center. They had all kinds of things that you could explore here. You could get passes for a whole bunch of different museums. It's just kind of nuts. I can't believe people don't take advantage of their local libraries. But like I said, this one has extra feeling for me because I used to work here.
How was it going back to your old stomping grounds?
It's like they say at the end of the Lord of the Rings, you can't ever go back to the Shire. It's too small. It looks weird. It's different, but it was fun. Chloe said something nice that you put it up. It was so fitting that you became an author. Now people can hide out to read my words. And that's true. My dad said that he was at the sci-fi selection in the adult part of the Lithgow Library as he ran out of sci-fi books in the children's section. See, so I was raised around readers. And hi to Leslie. Good morning. I thought about Leslie again today because my buddy Peppy at work was just walking out to his sugar shack to do the last parts of making maple sugar. So he's a little late, he said, but it's that time of season. So the library was great. I enjoyed it. I liked that you found so many of the resources that were available. I just walked around just, gap jawed, just like, oh, look at all these things. But you were like, look at this, they also have. And there was so much. Kind of made me think of when we were in Ogunquit, when you found those adventure backpacks. I guess they had the same there, you said?
So they have, yes, they have backpacks. Both libraries that we visited have backpacks that you can borrow if you're a kid, but they're stocked with sort of different things. So the ones in the Stevens Library, which is the one we just looked at, they tend to be packed with like STEM type of experiments, like science, technology, that sort of stuff. The ones in Ogunquit were sort of for adventuring. So science adjacent, science related, like go look at bugs outside or plants or something, but more designed to go outdoors and adventure. But also, did you see you could borrow like a glockenspiel, which I thought was wild. They have computers where you could do job searching if you need to do that. I think it's a great resource. And I think a lot of folks in the community kind of forget about their local library. So by the way, your dad mentioned the Lithgow Library in Augusta. I just wanted to say, I'm so happy that they gave John Lithgow his own library because I loved him in Third Rock from the Sun.
He's found on some fine feature films. Leslie points out that her first boil will be going on this weekend. So maybe this is right on time. Maybe I don't know anything. Last few weeks is gathering and then the boil happens. See all these tricky people. I didn't put it in the clips because I edited this clearly, not Dan, because it's, you can see the scratchy parts that I make mistakes.
There's no logo.
There's no logo. There is on the YouTube channel, so whatever. The thing I can tell you about the I lost my train of thought. Oh, you also had in there, like there was a whole gardening section, which would be like time appropriate to people putting their seeds in and all that. Like there's a lot of thought that goes into it. The movie stuff was interesting. You can come and learn about mushrooms thing. Like there's knowledge is the weapon that bad people tend to try to take out of a society fastest. And I think that in times when people are not feeling super happy with the world, it is powerful to flex your ability to acquire even more knowledge.
I agree. I also think that it's a necessary and important path to improving your life, to bettering yourself. And if you want to advance professionally or like maybe switch careers entirely, I kept thinking about this guest that we had on our show, Philip Ashley Ricks, years ago on the Backpack Show. He had a dream one night about being a chocolatier, like just that he suddenly was one, like Willy Wonka. Didn't know anything about it, how to do it, but woke up deciding he wanted to do that. He felt like what he wanted, his calling or something. So he went and learned how to do it. And I'm just thinking, if you're a young Philip Ashley Ricks and you don't know anything about making chocolate and you want to make it your life's work, you could watch a bunch of YouTube videos. If you don't have a computer, you go to the library and do it. Or you can take out books on chocolate making. They might even have some courses, you could sign up for. So I just keep thinking you could change your entire life with just what's available at your local library, and it won't cost you a thing.
Free knowledge is one of the best. So we go from my personal history and my personal acts of sedition by learning more and absorbing my skills, although I guess I need to still learn how to make chocolate, to the birthplace of the American Revolution. So the first battle ever fought in the American Revolution was Lexington, and kind of down the street was Concord. And we went to Concord, Mass. My mom and dad took us to Concord for some papers. My mom was writing on Hawthorne and Alcott and some of the other weirdos that were out that way, Thoreau. There's this whole clump of people that are important to American writing that were all from the same area. So the old manse, for instance, we've got a little tour. They didn't allow video, so we took some stills, and Dan put together some really good stills. But we have a tour of the old manse. Now, Ralph Waldo Emerson had lived there, another Emerson, I think, and then also Nathaniel Hawthorne and that woman whose name I'm going to forget, but you're going to remember.
Let me think. Oh, there was one named Sarah. I have to look up what her full name, but she was like one of the very best educated women of her time. It's very unusual for girls to receive any kind of education beyond what they would need to run the household. But she went out and she took the same courses as her brothers, learned Greek, and Latin and maths and everything, even tutored Harvard students. That's how smart she was. So yes, some amazing minds and creativity in that house over the years.
Well, people tend to know that that's Sarah Aden Bradford Ripley, the notorious Ripley, they called her, the talented Ripley. So yeah, we had gone, Dad mentioned Alcott, Sarah Ripley in this case. Sarah Ripley in this case. But down the street was Alcott. We did go by her little orchard, but we didn't stay there.
Can I just point something out that we were at Louisa May Alcott House, the orchard house. The Louisa May Alcott House, the orchard house. And I kind of wanted to go in because that was the setting for Little Women, her famous work. And it's also where she wrote it. And the two gentlemen I was with were like, nah, let's just get some exterior shots and be on our way.
That might have happened. The old manse, by the way, first Emerson in the house was Reverend William Emerson. He's the one who was like right there where the Continental Army came to fight. We had a great tour guide for that, by the way. He was swell. He was talking a lot about in the old manse, which again, think about this: Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, talented Ms. Ripley, whoever I missed in that, Hawthorne, all these like really important people, like over the span of 100-ish years. But this is also right out the window was the bridge where the second fight of the American Revolution happened. It was 100 British people versus 400 or so American militia, and happened right out on the lawn. So I think if you want, let's look at this video, and then we could talk through some of what we saw there. So I'll put it up. So we finish our tour of Concord, Mass out at the Old Manse, which is also right next to where the second fight of the American Revolution happened. 100 British versus 400 militia. And so we finish at the start of America. And by start, like when we got feisty and frisky and started fighting with people. What a day. Concord is cold today, but you know, it seems like we only go places when it's freezing. So we'll see how summer goes, but thanks, Concord.
Wow, that was cool. So if you notice a couple things in the video, I threw up a quick like banner now and then, but the fire buckets, those two things that were hanging, they had the name of the person who lived in that house at the time. It was sort of like announcing your presence to help with the fire by having your branded fire buckets. Like you'd show up, everybody would grab their bucket and run to go and help if there was a fire, and they'd pass the water up in these buckets. So like they'd be like, oh, guess who's here? You know, I don't know. It's sort of a community thing. So that was interesting. The other thing is I don't know if you could see, but some of the window panes, they have etching on them, like writing on them. And it's because Sophia Hawthorne took her diamond ring and wrote on some of the window panes. And so did her husband. Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote like a couple lines of poetry. She wrote little updates about, oh, we looked out this window with my, her toddler Una and saw the trees covered in ice and stuff. It looked like chandeliers. And I'm going, you guys are renting this house. They were renting the house for 3 years. They did not own the house. They scratched up the place. Those etchings are still there today. There's still a hole in the wall of the kitchen where they had put out like a vent for their stove and stuff. And I'm like, dang, renters used to take liberties.
They really did. One another interesting detail was that at the time of Ralph Waldo Emerson, he had a beautiful view out the window. And the windows, like I say, look out on a bridge, look out on a field, look out on water. And that's how he worked, was looking out the window, kind of enjoying things, writing his book, Nature and all that. Total contrast. Nathaniel Hawthorne had this crappy little block of wood kind of desk with a little triangular piece of wood that stuck it to the wall, facing away from the windows, facing away from all that energy. And it just kind of showed how their work was. Like Emerson was writing about nature and Hawthorne was writing about screw nature. It's all about people. And it was like demonstrated sort of even in how they'd set up the place, because that was an interesting way that they set up the old manses. You walked through different parts of time. We ended in the 1900s. The fire buckets, like you said, it was like branding. You'd go out to help and do your civic duty, but they made sure you saw your name go by on the buckets. Oh, the Ripleys were here helping, which was fascinating. There was a lot of that. There was a lot of situations where, yeah, Chloe, I was here. That is for sure what they were doing, which is cuckoo, like you say, Carrie. They were renting. So that's, it's just, how do we put permanence on our worlds, as it turned out? It's fascinating.
This tour is so worthwhile if you're at all interested in history. I'm such a geek, but history, but also art, creativity, transcendental thinking, because Ralph Waldo Emerson was originally a pastor, right? A pastor, minister. And because his whole family had done that, his dad's dad, going back, turns out didn't love it. When he was ministering, Ralph Waldo Emerson, ministering to a woman on her deathbed, she said, hey man, if this isn't your calling, you got to go find what is. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody's dying and they're like concerned about your direction in life. You must seem pretty down and out. So he left the ministry and went to Europe and talked to some of the premier kind of thinkers of the day and came back with this idea that mankind and humanity and nature and science and religion, that it's all one thing, that we artificially put them in different buckets, all one thing, which at the time was like crazy town sort of seditious thinking. But in writing those thoughts down in his book, Nature, he attracted to the old manse a lot of the most kind of progressive thinkers of the time. So anyway, there's so much to learn going there, so much inspiration to be taken, and tons of fun little bits too. Like we saw some wallpaper in there that wasn't really wallpaper. It's painted to look like French salon wallpaper. And apparently at the time, it was pretty controversial to have that wallpaper. It looked garish, I think they said, because it looks like a French salon. And this house had been like a minister's home for years and years. People are coming in and there's this like French salon wallpaper. So when the Hawthornes left, or were kicked out, to put it charitably, I guess, and the family came back, the talented Mrs. Ripley and her husband, for their retirement, they covered it up with some really ugly black and white English hunt wallpaper, since removed, but there's like one little piece they preserved so you can see, because they couldn't wait to cover up the French salon wallpaper. I'm just saying, go there. It's worth it.
Definitely a worthwhile tour. And there's like 8 or 9 other pretty cool tours. If one lives in the United States or wants to come visit Massachusetts, it is also the 250th anniversary of Concord this coming summer. There will for sure be lots of hullabaloo and fanfare and things to do and people to see and all kinds of American Revolutionary War time stuff. And again, it's just an interesting, timely time to hear conversations about kings and about how people came to this country and why they wanted what they wanted, and what the representation they needed and all that. So we also got little tidbits of kind of like the Concord's involvement in the early days of the revolution, because it was a time where there just was there was like, it was not two fighting forces. It was a official military fighting force and a bunch of dudes who happened to own guns. So it was like a very asymmetrical warfare kind of a situation where there was a bunch of regimented people on one side and a bunch of drunk guys who like to fight on the other side. And that's how the war got started. I mean, Samuel Adams, who's sort of famous now as a beer maker, was one of the guys who at every turn, everyone was like, can we just not invite Adams? Because he always is trying to get in fights with people. And he was somebody who was kind of an irritant that brought some of this revolution to bear. So for as many George Washington stories as there are, this is kind of in the guts. Revere, Paul Revere was one of the three riders who used to come by Concord. Like, there's all these stories that you've heard in American history that are all there. So it's definitely worth it. And also the home of Concord grapes. So should one like a little Concord grape jelly with their PB&J, it's a place to go.
So I just want to point out that it's pretty amazing that the house, the old manse in Concord, is still there at all, because that battle took place directly outside, and at the owner's wife and child at the time were there. And the tour guide even tells you the story of like the militiamen coming to defend themselves from the redcoats who are advancing, and they're yelling at the guy like, "Hey, isn't that your house? Isn't your wife in there? You should probably like go in there and protect your house, and like we'll handle things out here." So that's what ended up happening. But the fact that it's standing at all is a miracle. That the panes of glass etched by the hawthorns are still there is a miracle. More interesting to me as somebody who likes history is the fact that all of the furniture is original. Like, they have the pieces that the family were using there for centuries. I think the oldest piece, well, not centuries, but like almost like a long, long time. There's pieces in there that are like 200 years old. I think the oldest piece is an English daybed. The thing looks so uncomfortable and small, but it's still there and it's incredible. You can see the desk that Hawthorne wrote at, the desk that Emerson wrote at, the desk that their predecessors wrote at when they wrote their sermons, and the piano that the talented Mrs. Ripley played, and all this kind of stuff. So a really interesting place to visit, because the history, the living history of the place, it's still there. The dishes they used, the grandfather clock. It's crazy to see. You get a real feel for the day-to-day life. So definitely check it out. If you're a nerd like me, you'll love it. If you get dragged along and you don't love it, like, it won't be that bad. It's still pretty cool.
And Sarah Ripley's desk is there as well, which is extra interesting because at that time that was an uncommon thing for women to have, because why would women be allowed to do smart, interesting work? But she earned it so many different ways, and it said a whole lot. So there you go. There's our play for time for the day. A whole bunch of history to cover, a whole bunch of things to do. We have even more stuff to come. I forget, do we have a couple things in the editing bin? I forget what's left. We have my many bust story. I don't know if that'll be ready, but I feel like we have one more big one already in the hopper, but I might have lied.
So I think first, to tie it back to play for time, we do these things not because we want to be like a travel blog, but because this is how we stay engaged with life. I love learning about my community, and I've done it every city I've lived in. So when I was in the South, I was learning about Civil War history. And now that I'm back up north, learning about Revolutionary War history. And I find ghost tours are a good place to start. But anyhow, whatever your flavor of staying engaged with life is, this happens to be mine. So you'll notice it's a little overrepresented as our libraries. What do we have right now? Let's see. We've got 2 failed excursions in the hopper right now. And we're trying to decide whether we want to go back to complete and execute the original concept, or if we want to just like bundle them together and make like a busts clip where it's like, all right, we thought this was going to be great, and it didn't work out. So we've got 2. I think when we have 3, we'll have a viable clip for that. We have a few other things, other places that we visited and things we've done, and ideas for more, but I don't want to spoil anything. At some point, we will go to Newport, Rhode Island to see the Gilded Age mansions down there.
Yeah, like if you think you've seen Carrie get excited about some of the places we've visited, she's going to be off the chain on this one. It could be a solo episode because she's going to be just so much energy. She's got a lot of knowledge about this. I could just turn to her. She says this about me. She says, "Hey, give, what makes this lens an interesting lens for a camera? And she knows I'll talk for 28 minutes without remembering to stop. That's her when I ask her a Gilded Age type question, like, can you tell me what the kind of bustling was that people, how many items of clothing would they have to wear just to go out for a tea? And you probably know the answer to that.
I know it's a lot. And what's interesting to me about that, you can watch YouTube videos about this. A lot of times women now that shoot modern, they're like period pieces, but they're using modern movie sets and stuff. They wear these corsets and they're like, oh my God, it's so painful. They shrink my waist down so small. That is not what people used to do. I know it looks like that, but there's YouTube videos you can watch. I'll have to find one, like share it another time, but they're actually doing a couple different things. One is augmenting top and bottom, which makes your waist look smaller. And the corsets actually, it's not uncomfortable. There's room in it for them to move a little bit. So if anything, they maybe add like a half an inch worth of clothing, but the illusion is that they have very tiny waists. So I'm just saying that what you think you're looking at is not what you're looking at. It's a lot of clothing, but they end up looking actually small. So yes, you pulled the nerd string. Now I'll say the nerd things. But I love women's history. And so some of the best ways to find out about women's history, you have to dig into something like this. The Emerson family had a rich history that was preserved because women in the family did less traditional things. They went out, they were accomplished impressionist painters. They were musicians. They were scholars and writers. And that wasn't all that common, but the only reason we know about some of them is because they were part of this family. So it kind of bums me out, but at the same time, like that they couldn't strike out and get renowned on their own such that we would hear about them today. But I'm just happy that there is some way in which their stories were preserved.
I'm with you on that. So we'll come back with some more stories. We will find more ways to stay engaged. I'm always eager to see a little video clips from your world. We are. Please send them along. You can send them to chris@chrisbrogan.com or carrie@chrisbrogan.com. One of the @chrisbrogan.com addresses is fine. That's Dad answering Leslie's comment. Some of us are still short because Dad had pointed out that people are short back in the old days. So I think with that, though, we've played out all our time. So I'm going to replay my intro because I don't have an outro.
Together from clips of film made under a research program in computer. The images are arranged to